From blatantly lazy, cynical paycheck roles in terrible genre films, to more disappointingly miscalculated attempts that just didn't work out. These performances all did the same thing. They fell horrendously flat. But while thankfully nobody's dealing with a career ender here, a few are at least likely to secure Razzie nominations in the coming months, while fans hope that they'll dive back into a more worthy project or two in 2024. So with all that said, I am Gareth, this is What Culture, and here are 10 actors who just gave their worst performance ever. Number 10, Sylvester Stallone, Expendables 4. Granted, you could make an argument for just about everyone in Expendables 4 not named Jason Statham giving a career worst performance. But despite Sly Stallone having a fair number of clunkers to his name throughout his illustrious career, he again hit the bottom of the well with his maddeningly scaled-back role in this action sequel few were truly asking for. Even though Stallone plays Expendables leader Barney Ross, he ends up disappearing for the vast majority of the movie when Barney is quote-unquote killed at the end of the first act, only to reappear in the finale, saving the day while clunkily revealing that he faked his own death, because of course he did. Even when Stallone is on screen though, he's mostly either sat down in a gunship or doing something of limited mobility like standing still. Now to be fair to Sly, the man's close to 80 years of age, but in every fibre of his performance it's painfully obvious his heart just was not in it. Number 9, Shellene Woodley, Ferrari. Michael Mann's Ferrari is a very okay sports drama topped by 2 electric performances from Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz in the roles of Enzo Ferrari and his wife Laura. But the third wheel in this relationship also happens to be the weak link. Shailene Woodley plays Enzo's mistress Lena Lardi throughout the film, and like her 2 co-stars, she naturally dons an Italian accent for the part. Woodley's certainly trying here, bless her, but the accent doesn't hold muster whatsoever. Her natural American twang frequently seeps through, and even when it doesn't actually sound like we're listening to an Italian woman speaking at all. Woodley is a terrifically talented actress, who even managed to give a persuasive performance throughout the increasingly dire Divergent franchise, and yet she spends basically this whole movie fighting to convince the audience she's Italian, a fight she categorically loses. Number 8, Zachary Levi and Gina Rodriguez, Spy Kids Armageddon. Granted, nobody's signing up to appear in a Spy Kids reboot with the intent of putting on an acting clinic, but even so, this marked a new low for not only director Robert Rodriguez, but also his 2 talented lead actors, Zachary Levi and Gina Rodriguez. Phoned in isn't even the phrase to adequately describe the mailed-in from space performances from the duo, who are so thoroughly going through the motions here that one could quite fairly accuse their work of being AI-assisted, though for legal reasons we will clarify it apparently isn't. Yet their surprising lack of chemistry only further sabotages a pair of performances that scream loudly, "I needed a paycheck." And while we shouldn't shame a hungry actor for taking a bad gig, in the very least they could have shown some enthusiasm, right? They're ultimately far from the movie's biggest problem, but they do not help at all. Number 7, John David Washington, the creator. Audiences can't quite seem to make their mind up about John David Washington, and it's not really their fault. In both Ballers and BlacKkKlansman, he proved himself to be a charismatic performer, capable of operating outside of his father Denzel's shadow. But his more recent work in Tenet and Amsterdam were conversely chided as wooden by many. Yet those performances seem positively animated compared to his recent turn in Gareth Edwards' sci-fi blockbuster The Creator. Despite the considerable emotional complexities of his protagonist Joshua Taylor, Washington plays the man as a strangely flat blank slate who rarely feels like more than a generic action hero. You can certainly argue that Edwards' writing wasn't the best here, but Washington's effect-devoid work never really makes Joshua feel like more than a hollow cipher. That he's categorically out-acted by child actor Madeline Una Voiles throughout the film certainly doesn't help matters either. Number 6, Alison Brie, Freelance. Alison Brie is a tough actress to dislike, and generally speaking she gives 100% to even her frothier, less challenging roles in more mainstream fare. But she's never made something less deserving of her talents than Freelance, my god. The same can't quite be said of her bemuscled co-star John Cena, who's certainly given worse performances than this, but for Brie, this is definitely scraping the very bottom of the barrel. Brie plays journalist Claire Wellington, who gets caught up in a crazy adventure while interviewing a dictator, and the script proves so aggressively miserable that even Brie's natural charm and pep scarcely shine through. Brie's chemistry with Cena feels forced, and there's just nothing at all for her to latch onto character-wise. Aside from a single memorable scene featuring Brie in a state of considerable undress, this is a completely anonymous performance, and the actress can't even pretend she's interested in what's going on. Thanks for checking out this video today, and if you're enjoying this particular ride, then hit the subscribe button down below. Number 5. Matthew Modine, Retribution. Matthew Modine is a perfectly well-respected actor in his own right, with a bevy of memorable performances to his name. The man also evidently isn't above pimping himself out for an obvious payday, as he did this past year in the generally wretched Liam Neeson vehicle Retribution. Modine plays Anders Muller, a friend and colleague of Neeson's embattled protagonist who is quote-unquote killed, and yet later revealed to be the film's secret villain. Yet Modine never even tries to hide the fact he's playing a bad guy, and from the moment he first appears on screen, it's hilariously obvious there's more to him than meets the eye. That, and him being the only other credited actor of note, ensures he's gonna be the twist villain. If you listen closely enough, you can practically hear him cackling his way to the bank as he reels off his big villain monologue in the third act. And while there are certainly worse gigs for actors to take, it's a basically zero-effort performance all the same. Number 4. Nia Vardalos, My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3. Rom-com My Big Fat Greek Wedding launched writer-star Nia Vardalos to global fame back in 2002. And even netted her both an Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay and Golden Globes nod for Best Actress. Not too shabby. Vardalos consequently returned for the second film in 2016, of course, and this year she came back once more for My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, now also in the role of director too. And boy, this was just a sequel that the world didn't need, huh? Everything in this Grease-set installment whiffs of desperation, but nothing more than Vardalos' own performance, which brutally lacks the charm of her prior portrayals of Tula. Number 3. Dennis Quaid, On a Wing and a Prayer. On a Wing and a Prayer would be hot trash with just about any actor in the lead role. But even for Dennis Quaid, this is seriously sloppy stuff. Quaid dramatizes the life of Doug White, a husband and father who is forced to take control of a private aircraft containing his family when the pilot dies of a heart attack. What a nightmare. Corny isn't even the word to describe his work here. From his hilariously unconvincing South American accent to the strangely laughable facial expressions he pulls throughout, it all hits an off-key and turns an apparently inspirational story into an abject farce. Quaid certainly isn't the only actor to have his dignity take a hit merely by appearing in this. Heather Graham also slums it as his screen wife, but even with as many undemanding genre joints as he's appeared in lately, this somehow teases out his worst performance ever. Number 2. Joaquin Phoenix, Napoleon. Love it or hate it, it's safe to say that Joaquin Phoenix's turn in Ridley Scott's Napoleon biopic was a performance like nobody expected. If Phoenix seemed destined to give a big hammy turn as the legendary French emperor, that's ultimately the exact opposite of what he does. And let's be honest, it kinda sucks. Phoenix decides to instead play Napoleon as a mumbly, scarcely intelligible weirdo. The film makes it clear that Scott hasn't got any interest whatsoever in a biopic that lionizes Bonaparte. But all the same, Phoenix's approach feels completely wrong-headed if this movie is going to be anything close to a factual account of who the man was. More to the point, he's way too old to play Napoleon for large chunks of the film, being more than double Napoleon's actual age during the Siege of Toulon sequence at the beginning. For those excited to see Phoenix devouring the scenery as one of the most iconic leaders in history, this felt like a brutal missed opportunity. Number 1. Ellen Burstyn, The Exorcist Believer. God bless Ellen Burstyn for, at 90 years of age, agreeing to return to the Exorcist franchise in order to lend a vague semblance of credibility to David Gordon Green's new sequel, The Exorcist Believer. But make no mistake, by her own admission, she only agreed to return after scoring herself a massive check to fund an acting scholarship. And boy, it certainly shows in her performance. Even accepting the natural gravitas which Burstyn brings to even her most unfussed performance, which just so happens to be this very one, she's clearly checked out, and thinking about the money while going through the motions in her small number of scenes as Chris McNeil. Now we can't bring ourselves to criticize an incredible nonagenarian actress for getting her bag, and giving the bare minimum effort in a terrible movie in recompense. But it still doesn't mean her performance is in any way good either, because it's not.